with Hamlet, which should be Act 5, Scene 2. If I'm reading this correctly, yeah. Act 5, Scene 2. We're picking up with about line 223 or so, it looks like. They've entered the hall, and Hamlet and Laertes are getting set for their foil match, their fencing match. And the king takes Laertes' hand and Hamlet's hand and puts them together. And Hamlet says this to Laertes: "Give me your pardon, sir. I have done you wrong, but pardon it as you are a gentleman. This presence knows, and you must needs have heard, how I am punished with a sword distraction." This presence refers to the court. In other words, Hamlet is saying, I know everybody's been talking about me. I know everybody has been watching me. Okay? And so now he says, they all know, but now you need to know why I am acting the way I am. What I have done that might your nature, honor, and exception roughly awake, I here proclaim was madness. It wasn't me. Okay? Was it Hamlet wronged Laertes? Was it Hamlet who killed Laertes' father? Because that's part of what he means by wrong Laertes. Never Hamlet. If Hamlet from himself be ta'en away, and when he's not himself does wrong Laertes, then Hamlet does it not. Hamlet denies it. If it wasn't me that did it, then the me that is Hamlet says, I didn't do it. Hamlet denies the Hamlet Jr., mini-me Hamlet, however you want to configure it, they did it. Who does it then? His madness. If it be so, Hamlet is of the faction that is wronged. In other words, Hamlet is saying, if what I've just said is true, then I am as wronged as you are, Laertes. I am as wronged as the queen is. Okay? His madness is poor Hamlet's enemy. In this audience, let my disclaiming from a purposed evil free me so far in your most generous thoughts that I have shot my arrow over the house and hurt my brother. It's a very long way of saying, I'm sorry, Laertes. I never meant to harm you. And look at Laertes' reply. I am satisfied in nature. Nature meaning in kind, as I ought to be, whose motive in this case should stir me most to my revenge. Okay, there's the revenge tragedy. He has a father lost. He ought to, exact revenge. And so here, Laertes says, it's cool, we're square, everything's fine. But in my terms of honor, I stand aloof. That is, I stand apart. I'm not really satisfied yet. I will no reconcilement till by some elder masters of known honor I have a voice and precedent of peace to keep my name ungored. In other words, as far as my honor goes, we still have to be reconciled. How will that reconciliation take place? There will have to be some kind of arbitration. There will have to be some kind of intermediary between us so that his name, he says, remains ungored. And your gloss tells you, what does that mean? That his reputation will be unstained. Why? Because he has to stand up for the family name. He has to defend the family honor. So at this point, it appears Hamlet and Laertes have just made up, as it were. There's no friction between them. Yet, we're still going to see the fencing match. Okay? Till that time, that is till we have that mediation process, I do receive your offered love like love. In other words, I receive it as it is expressed. I receive it for what you say it is, and will not wrong it. Okay? So Hamlet says, okay, let's put a wager on this then. So they take Hamlet tells Laertes, I'll be your foil, Laertes. And he means foil in two meanings. He means the theatrical sense. I will be the one to show off your greatness, Laertes. I will be the one to show off your character, your skill, etc. But he also means I will be your weapon. Okay? Your skill shall, in the darkest, like a star in the darkest night, stick fiery off indeed. And Laertes thinks Hamlet is mocking him. No, Hamlet says, by this hand. So the king says, give them their foils, Osric. And Laertes doesn't like the foil he's given, so he takes another. Hamlet says he likes his. And they start to fence. The king gets the cups of wine, sets them on the table, and says when Hamlet scores, he'll drink to Hamlet, etc. And they start to battle. And Laertes, kind of challenges Hamlet. Come, my lord. Okay? And Hamlet scores a hit. Now, in fencing, you can score a hit a variety of ways. But a good hit is with the tip of the foil. And keep in mind, these foils are supposed to be tipped. They're supposed to have rubber tips on the end. Okay? Hamlet won, Laertes, no. In other words, Laertes is trying to get out of this hit. Hamlet, judgment. He calls for the referee to intervene. And Osric, a hit. A very palpable hit. Palpable feeling. Okay? What other kind of hit would there be? There's a flourish. They fight again, and the king says, stay, give me drink. Hamlet, this pearl is thine. And he puts something in the cup. Here's to thy health. Give him the cup. Hamlet's like, no, I'm not thirsty yet. Let's keep battling. Okay? And the queen says, line 289, he's fat and scant of breath. When the king says, our son shall win. Okay? Gertrude, Hamlet's mother, says, he's fat and he's out of breath. Well, keep in mind, how old is Hamlet again? He's 30. He's not been at university. He has already said, in a previous passage, that he hasn't been doing his exercises. Meaning, he hasn't been practicing the foil or fencing. And fencing is, if you've ever watched it or you've ever attempted it, or sword fighting, and I mean real sword fighting, not just swinging a piece of wood or whatever and pretending it's sword fighting. If you've ever tried it, it is extremely tiring very quickly. I mean, just the first 5 minutes of a duel will wear you out if you're not in extremely good shape already. Okay? So the queen says he's fat and scant of breath. Here, Hamlet, take my napkin, rub thy brows. And she drinks. Gertrude, don't drink. I will, my lord, I pray you pardon me. And she drinks. The king, it's the poison cup. Notice nobody else on the stage hears, but the audience hears. So, Hamlet wipes his face. They get ready to fight again. Laertes has an aside. It's almost against my conscience. Notice, it's not against his conscience, but it's almost. Because what does Laertes know that Hamlet doesn't know? The tip is poisoned. The cup is poisoned. The whole game is rigged. Okay? Against Hamlet. Hamlet, come for the third, Laertes. You do but dally. I pray you pass with your best violence. I'm afeard you make a wanton of me. In other words, Hamlet now is challenging Laertes and saying, you're not really trying. You're just playing with me. Come on, treat me like a honored opponent. Laertes, say you so? Have at you now. And Laertes goes for the kill, literally. He wounds Hamlet. They scuffle. They change rapiers. Hamlet wounds Laertes. The queen falls. Horatio notices both Hamlet and Laertes are bleeding. And Laertes says, why? When Osric says, how is it, Laertes? Meaning, how does it go with you? How are you? Why, as a woodcock to mine own spring, Osric. And that takes us back to the beginning of the play when Polonius tells Ophelia that Hamlet's love letters and everything are springs to catch woodcocks. What did Hamlet tell Horatio about his two friends, Horatio and his mother, about his two friends that were bound to take him to England? He says, "'Tis the sport to have the engineer hoist with his own petard." Here the engineer is hoist with his own petard, because Laertes was in on the plot to kill Hamlet. "I am justly killed with mine own treachery." Hamlet looks to the queen. The king, "Oh, she swoons to see you bleed." "No, don't look at the queen. There's nothing to see here, Hamlet." "No, the drink. Oh, Hamlet, the drink. I'm poisoned. Ah," and she dies. Hamlet, "Villainy, ho, let the door be locked." In other words, the guilty are not going to escape. There will be slaughter. Treachery, seek it out, and Laertes falls. Okay, notice, Hamlet says, treachery, seek it out. Boom, Laertes falls. Well, treachery has made itself known by Laertes falling. And Laertes says, "It's here, Hamlet. Hamlet, thou art slain. No medicine in the world can do thee good. In thee there is not half an hour's life. The treacherous instrument is in thy hand. Unbaited and envenomed." Uncovered, that's unbaited, and envenomed, poisoned. "The foul practice hath turned itself on me. Here I lie, never to rise again. Thy mother's poisoned. I can no more. The king's to blame. He's the one who put us all up to this." Hamlet, and the point, envenomed, and he stabs Claudius. King, "Defend me, friends, I am hurt." Hamlet then takes the cup and forces it down the king's mouth. He's going to make sure he dies. If there's not enough poison left on the tip of the sword, he's going to make sure he drinks the rest of the wine. Okay? The king dies, and Laertes, because Laertes hasn't died yet, Laertes speaks and says he's justly served. It is a poison tempered by himself. Again, the engineer is hoisted by his own petard. "Exchange forgiveness with me, noble Hamlet. Mine and my father's death come not upon thee, nor thine on me." Now, notice what Laertes has just done. He says exchange forgiveness, and then he says, "Mine and my father's death are not upon you." Well, who died and made him God? Who's Laertes to forgive Hamlet of his and his father's death? Well, it's because Laertes has read his New Testament. Those whose sins you have released, they are released. Those whose sins you remember, they are remembered. Okay? That's why Christ tells his followers, forgive others of their sins, and they are forgiven. Judge others, condemn others, and who is judged and condemned? The individual doing the judging and condemning. Judge not, lest ye be judged. Okay? So Laertes is putting into practice the Christianity that lies kind of just beneath the surface of the play. Okay? Nor thine on me. That is, don't let your death be on me, Hamlet. Hamlet. Heaven make thee free of it. That's Hamlet's way of saying, I don't hold you at fault for my death. Okay, notice, has Hamlet drunk the wine that the king gave him? Not yet. He will, but not yet. Who is responsible for Hamlet's death? Laertes. Okay? But Hamlet says, I don't hold you responsible. This is kind of like, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Okay? I am dead, Horatio. Wretched queen, adieu. You, you that look pale and tremble at this chance, that the people who are on the stage watching with eyes wide open, and it's implied the audience, that are but mutes or audience to this act. Had I but time, as this fell Sergeant Death is strict in his arrest. In other words, he feels the poison moving towards his heart. Oh, I could tell you, but let it be. But, I mean, if anybody ever wanted or ever looked for an opening to follow up on something Shakespeare wrote and to write a sequel, Hamlet's just given you the opportunity. I could tell you, but I won't. Okay? Horatio, I am dead. Thou livest, report me my cause aright to the unsatisfied. What does that mean, to the unsatisfied? Yeah. You know, what happened when Hamlet stabbed the king? Treason! Treason! Okay? In other words, there are going to be people outside this room, not this room, the room Hamlet is in, who are going to wonder, how is it that the king came dead? And there will be people who will say, well, Hamlet stabbed him, and then he made him drink the poisoned wine. And so Hamlet is asking Horatio, tell the story correctly. Tell it aright. Now, what is the correct story from Hamlet's perspective? Hamlet's perspective. That's the truth. Okay? Horatio, never believe it. I am more an antic Roman than a Dane. Here's yet some more wine. And he tries to take the cup, and Hamlet, guzzles it down himself. What does he mean when he says, I am more an antic Roman than a Dane? Or antique Roman, if you want.
It says that suicide is honorable, opposed to living is honorable.
And it's honorable for a Roman soldier to die with his lord. Okay? This is Horatio's way of saying, oh, I'm not going to go on. I'm going to end it now. I'm going to pull out the bear bodkin, as it were. Hamlet, nope. O God, Horatio, what a wounded name, thing standing thus unknown, shall I leave behind me. In other words, Horatio, if I die and you die, what will happen to my name? Everyone will wonder. People will guess. People will suggest that I died dishonorably, unnobly. No. If thou didst ever hold me in thy heart, absent thee from felicity a while. Wow, think about what that means. Think about what that means. Channeling my inner Woodbury. Absent thee from felicity a while. What does he mean by felicity?
Like you're released from life.
Okay. Felicity is joy, bliss, pleasure. So what's the felicity? He is saying telling Horatio to absent himself from heaven. No, Horatio, live a while longer down here in this stale, flat promontory, this place of weeds, as he refers to the earth, more specifically Denmark, as. Okay? And in this harsh world, draw thy breath in pain to tell my story. He's asking Horatio to do something hard here. He's not asking him to do something easy. Suffer, Horatio. Why? For my sake. Endure the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. Okay? For my sake. Make sure my story gets told properly. And then we have young Fortinbras come in, or alluded to, and Hamlet still hasn't died. Notice the queen took a sip of wine and she's dead. Okay? The king gets poisoned by the sword and drinks the wine. He's dead. Hamlet's been poisoned by the sword and drunk the wine, and he's still talking. I die, Horatio. I guess third time's a charm.
Such is the power of his awesome wordiness.
Such is the power of his awesome wordiness. The potent poison quite o'ercrowds my spirit. I cannot live to hear the news from England, but I do prophesy the election lights on Fortinbras. He has my dying voice. That is, the nephew of the King of Norway. Okay? The nephew of the one that Hamlet Sr. killed. And Hamlet says, he has my election, meaning he should be king after me. He has my dying voice. So tell him, with the occurrence more or less, which have solicited. The rest is silence. And he dies. Okay? Notice how the play begins, before I go on to the next couple lines. Who's there? Implication is someone's there, but it begins with a question. Hamlet, the character, ends with what? Silence. No questioning, no declaring, just silence. Horatio now cracks a noble heart. Good night, sweet prince, and flights of angels sing thee to thy rest. Okay. Sing, chorus you as your soul ascends to heaven. Okay. Fortinbras comes in and he asks what it is that he's seeing. Okay. The ambassador comes in and tells Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. In other words, England has done what he was asked to do. Not what he was asked to do by the king, but by Hamlet. Switch the letters. Okay? So Horatio tells Fortinbras, so shall you hear of carnal, bloody, unnatural acts, of accidental judgments, such as what? What was an accidental judgment? Or an accidental act? Killing Polonius. Stabbing Polonius through the arras. What does Hamlet immediately say when he realizes it's Polonius? Fool, I took thee for thy better. I thought you were the king. Casual slaughters of deaths put on by cunning and forced cause, and in this upshot, purposes mistook fallen on the inventors' heads. How many people had purposes that were mistook, that fell on their own heads? Polonius, okay, Laertes, Claudius. You could possibly argue the Queen, okay. Hamlet? Did Hamlet have any purposes mistook? No, he intended what he did, okay. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern? What did Hamlet try to tell them to do? As he tried to tell Polonius, as he tried to tell Ophelia when he told her, get thee to a nunnery.
Get out of his business while you're still alive.
Yeah, I mean, he was really telling them, meddle not in my affairs. Why? What did the king, it's not a passage that we looked at, but what did the king say about Hamlet and why his madness was so dangerous? He says, madness and great ones must not go unwatched. Why? What happens if, no offense to any of you, I'm not saying none of you are great, but what happens if one of us goes mad? Completely lunatic. Well, compare that to what happens if Barack Obama goes mad?
Not so bad.
I don't know, I'd much rather have one of you go crazy. Sorry, than have the president, have the guy in charge of the nuclear codes. Or Joe Biden. Well, take that back. He's already crazy enough. Or the Speaker of the House, or a senator, or a cop. Go crazy. Anybody in a position of authority. Okay? The university president. University policeman. Anybody that has some element of greatness can do so much more damage. You need a real world example. Look at Hitler. Why was Hitler so dangerous? One, because he had greatness by the virtue of his office. But even more so, even if you don't know a lick of German, listen to his speeches and watch the people respond. The power of his rhetoric, of his words, could move people, which is why rhetoric is so dangerous in certain people's hands. So, Fortinbras. Let us haste to hear it. In other words, do tell. Call the noblest to the audience. That is, call those who aren't here. Call the nobles, call the electors to the audience so that they can hear aright. Because the idea is, if they hear, word will spread. And Hamlet's true cause will be known. For me, with sorrow, I embrace my fortune. Well, compare that to the opening line of the king, where the king says, with glad sorrow, we embrace our new life. Well, what's his new life? I'm now the king. I'm married to my dead brother's wife. Oh, my dead brother is dead. That's so sad. But we're happy. We found each other. Compare that, which is all an utter lie, with Fortinbras. With sorrow I embrace my fortune. Because what is his fortune? Of Denmark, or going to be. But this isn't how he wanted to attain that. Why is it the king comes, the dead king, the ghost? Why is it they have the nightly watch on the battlements? Because they're afraid of young Fortinbras war. In other words, Fortinbras does want to be king of Denmark, but he wants to earn it the good old-fashioned way, through military prowess battle. And he didn't even have to kill anybody. I have some rights of memory in this kingdom, which now to claim my vantage doth invite me. And Horatio, oh yeah, forgot. I got more about that too. Okay. Hamlet wanted you to be king. So, the play ends. Now, it's rather fitting, I think, that, where's that line? When Hamlet tells Horatio, if thou didst ever hold me in thy heart, absent thee from felicity a while, and in this harsh world draw thy breath in pain. Go from there to the beginning of King Lear. Okay? Not quite the beginning. I want to skip the first few lines. We'll come back to them in a moment. But where Lear speaks, page 1208 in your book. And Lear says, line 38, 39, line 40 and 41. He's talking about dividing the kingdom. Okay? And he gives us the reason why. To confer them, that is the powers of authority, the duties of kingship, to confer them on younger strengths while we, unburdened, crawl toward death. Okay? Now, if you've read the Michael Alexander book, he doesn't do a lot with this in terms of when he starts to talk about Lear and Hamlet and Othello and not Merchant of Venice, Macbeth and the tragedies. But it seems to me that if you read Shakespeare's plays in the order in which they are written, something had to have happened around 1599 or so to turn his mind to a darker cast, to a darker frame of mind. Because it's right around 1599, 1600, where he begins writing what I would kind of call his black tragedies. I mean, Richard III is an early play. It's a tragedy. But it's not bleak. Okay? Richard II, even though it's one of the history plays, is a tragedy. Romeo and Juliet, it's a tragedy. Titus Andronicus, it's a tragedy. But it's not Nart. What the heck? It's not. Just completely lost everything. It's not bleak and despairing the way Lear, Hamlet, Othello, and Macbeth are. Those four plays just, I think for whatever reason, we are getting an insight into Shakespeare's internal self. Something happened either in his life personally or to England. Could be the death of Queen Elizabeth. Though, I don't know. I kind of think probably by the time she died, a lot of people were cheering the death of Queen Elizabeth because she'd gotten to be such a mean old hag. I mean, cutting people's tongues out, drawing and quartering. If you watch the BBC version of Alexander's book, where, he talks about some of the executions that occurred, disemboweling people and having their bowels burned in front of their eyes while they're still alive. So they see their entrails burning and then they feel the pain of their guts, roasting in front of them. That's a sick old lady who would order those kinds of things, okay? Now go back to the beginning of the play. We have Kent and Gloucester speaking. And Kent asks Gloucester, and I'll go back and talk about little introduction kind of stuff as we go through. Kent asks Gloucester, "Is not this your son, my lord? His breeding, sir, hath been at my charge." In other words, yeah, he's mine. In other words, it's been charged against me that he's my son. It's Gloucester's way of saying, well, his mother says he's mine. I have so often blushed to acknowledge him that now I am braised to it. Braised to it. In other words, I've had to acknowledge so often that he's my son that now I'm used to it. I cannot conceive you. The king, Kent is asking, why are you talking like this? I don't understand. This young fellow's mother could. She could conceive of me. Whereupon she grew round wombed, and had indeed, sir, a son for her cradle, ere she had a husband for her bed. Do you smell a fault? Notice your gloss there. A fault. Sin. Loss of scent by the hounds. Okay, that's, do you smell a fault? Loss of scent by the hounds. That's idiotic. What else is he talking about? He's talking about a fault, not just a sin, but do you smell a sex organ? After all, what do a woman's genitalia look like? A crack. of fault, as it were. Kent, I cannot wish the fault that is, I cannot wish the sin undone. Why? The issue of it. This young man being so proper. Okay, now who's he talking about? Which son? Edmund. Okay? You've got Gloucester, and he has two sons. Edgar and Edmund. Why do I put Edgar over here? If you draw a logical tree, who's always on the left side? The eldest. Okay. He's the eldest. He's also the legitimate one. Okay. In other words, Gloucester was married to his mother. She might not have been married at the moment when Edgar was, but they did marry. Okay. This one he's talking about is Edmund, the illegitimate one. But I cannot wish the fault undone. But I have a son, sir, by order of law, meaning legitimately, some year elder than this, who yet is no dearer in my account. That is, my other son is about a year older than Edmund, and yet he's no dearer to me. So what's Gloucester telling us about his relationship with his children? Doesn't really have one. Kind of sucks. Though this knave came something saucily to the world before he was sent for, meaning, okay, could mean born early, could also mean, I didn't really mean to get her knocked up. Okay? Yet was his mother fair. There was good sport at his making, and the whore's son must be acknowledged. Notice the little 3 points there. He came too early, meaning, I didn't mean for her to get pregnant, but she was fair. Okay, fair in our sense is not the Elizabethan sense. Fair in the Elizabethan world, we would use another word, hot. Yet was his mother hot. She was a looker. What else? There was good sport at his making. He's saying, and I can remember when we conceived him. Man, that was a great night. You know, it's like most rock lyrics, you know. Oh, that this night could last forever and all that nonsense. And, therefore, the whore's son must be acknowledged. Okay, now where's Edmund while he's saying all this? Right here. Yeah, and he has an elder brother who's legitimate, and I don't really love him any more than I do this one. Do you know this noble gentleman, Edmund? No, my lord. Well, my lord of Kent. Remember him or after? Kent, I must love you, and soon know you better, etc. Edmund, sir, I shall study deserving. Look at your gloss there. Strive to be worthy of your esteem. Okay? Then Lear comes in, and he tells us what his purpose is. Meantime, now what kind of word is that? Where do we see that, like in stories? Or rephrase it, meanwhile.
Well, this is happening over here. Over here, this is...
So that kind of suggests something else has been happening before with Lear. And he comes in and just says, meanwhile, and it's kind of like, meanwhile, back at the castle, Lear gets ready to, telling you something else has already occurred. Meantime, we shall express our darker purpose. Okay, here's a theme. Darkness, darker, dark, end, dark, as opposed to dark, as opposed to light, illumined, illumination. What's it hard to do in the dark? See. But when you have light, things become much clearer. So Lear says, meantime, we shall express our darker purpose, our hidden purpose, our unclear purpose, our unseen purpose. Give me the map. And he takes the map and he says, know that we have divided in three our kingdom. 'Tis our fast intent, that is, fast intent, our unshakable, our firm and decided intent. Nobody's going to persuade me to do otherwise. To shake all cares and business from our age, conferring them on our younger strengths, while we, unburdened, crawl toward death. He's not going to go toward death like Dylan Thomas's do not go gentle into that good night. He's going to crawl across the hard scrabble of life. Okay? Now, what is he saying he's going to do as king? What term would we use to describe Lear's actions here?
To retire.
What did King Edward VII do in 1938?
Abdicate.
He abdicated. He gave up the throne. Why? So he can marry Wallace Simpson. Okay? The only problem is, in Elizabethan England and earlier, you can't abdicate the throne. You can't give it up. For the simple reason, unless you're Henry IV, you didn't choose the throne. You became king by what? Divine right. You were chosen by God. Maybe through the simple act of being born to the right person. Okay? But it was your duty as God's chosen representative on earth to lead the people how long? Until you die. And this is probably, I think, why Queen Elizabeth isn't going to give up the throne. Now, give up the throne like Charlton Heston with his Winchester when you pry it from her cold, dead fingers. Okay? Which means Charles is going to be a good 75 or 80 before he even gets his brittle little bony fingers on the thing. So what is he doing here? Okay, keep in mind, great chain of being we talked about. And it goes all the way down. And who's at the top of the great chain of being in the human realm? The king. So what happens when the king says, no, I don't want to be king anymore? That chain just now flops all loose. Okay? So if the king disrupts human relationships, human order, what's going to happen?
Chaos.
You're going to see that chaos in all versions of the great chain of being. Because there's the great chain, there's the political great chain of being, there is the communal, the societal great chain of being. What else is there?
Also nature.
Yeah.
Nature,
And the supernatural.
supernatural. We're going to have, storms, tempests, etc. What else? What's the building block of society? Family. You're going to see that chaos reign within the family. Well, what do we have? We have Lear and his 3 daughters. And 2 of his daughters lie through their teeth to get the bigger portions. And the 3rd daughter, who doesn't lie, who loves her father as she ought to love him, gets exiled. What about Gloucester's family? Gloucester thinks the one who hates him loves him. And discounts the one who does love him. What about marriages? I mean, look at Goneril and Reagan, who both are married, and meanwhile, just rather fitting in the whole light of, the news from Friday afternoon, and are both meeting. If they're not actually sleeping with Edmund, they want to be, because they've plotted with him. Okay? So human society in Lear is just totally screwed up, with the exception of two individuals. Well, really three. Kent, sorry, Cordelia, four I should say. Edgar, who's the fourth? Who's the fourth one who's in proper with the other individuals he comes into contact with? The fool. Okay. So let's talk about all of this. So King Lear decides he's going to divide things up. And how is he going to divide them up? Is he going to do that on the basis of IQ? He's going to do it on the basis of ability? Which one had the better grades at the better schools? No. Here's how he's going to divide it. He says, "Tell me, my daughters, since now we will divest us both of rule, interest of territory, cares of state." What is he going to keep to himself, though? Kind of like former president. He's going to keep the perks of office. He just won't have to deal with the problems, the decisions of everyday rule. Okay. He won't have to worry about wars and all that kind of stuff. But he thinks he's going to be able to keep his 100 knights and have his not Social Security, his Secret Service detail in the free planes, etc. So he says, "Tell me, my daughter, we will divest us both of rule, interest of territory, cares of state. Which of you shall we say doth love us most?" What is Lear showing here? Vanity. Word for vanity that's kind of one level up. Hubris is a little different. He is a classic narcissist. He wants everybody around him to love him. Why? Because he loves himself more than everybody around him. So, tell us, which of you loves us most? And those who say, or the one who says the most, she will get the largest bounty. How sick and perverse is that? Okay. So he says, the eldest born, you get to speak first. Now, what does this I'm the youngest of five, but automatically enable the youngest to do? Oh, yeah. Oh, well, Goneril says she loves you this much, Daddy. And Reagan says she loves you this much. But I love you this much. Okay. I love you 4 times as much as the both of them put together, multiplied by 5. You know. Sir, I love you more than words can wield the matter. In other words, I love you more than words can say. Dearer than eyesight, space, and liberty. Beyond what can be valued, rich or rare. No less than life with grace, health, beauty, honor, blah, 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 blah. Okay? Cordelia. What shall Cordelia speak? Love and be silent. That's what she means. Here's what she will speak. Love and be silent. Okay? Lear. Well, okay. Goneril, I like your answer. You this territory. Now, what say you, our second daughter, Reagan, or Regan if you want, wife of Cornwall? Speak. Of that self meddle as my sister and prize me at her worth. In other words, ditto what Goneril said. Okay? What she said, in my true heart, I find she names my very deed of love. Only she comes too short. That I profess myself an enemy to all other joy, which the most precious square of sense possesses, and find I am alone felicitate in your dear highness's love. All my wealth and being and happiness and joy and life and love, blah, 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 they all come from you, dearest father. He goes, oh, I like that answer too. You get this territory. And now, he says, our joy. Although our last and least, to whose young love the vines of France and milk of Burgundy strive to be interest. France and Burgundy is not part of France. France and Burgundy are there to woo Cordelia. They are there to win her hand, okay, and a dowry from the king. She says, what can you say? To draw a third more opulent than your sisters. Speak. Nothing. 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 Of nothing. Speak again. 0 times 0 still equals 0. Unhappy that I am, I cannot heave my heart into my mouth. I love your majesty according to my bond, no more nor less. My bond to you. I love you as a daughter ought to love her father. Period. No more nor less. Why no more? What would it be if she loved him more than that? Be twisted and weird and sick. Okay, that would be the incestuous thing. What else would it be? A lie? How about idolatrous? To love him more than he ought to be loved would be to placing him above what he is. Okay? How now, Cordelia? Notice her name. What does it suggest? Look at the root of it. Cord. Cor. Heart. Mend your speech a little. Are your fortunes. Okay, allow me to speak. Good my Lord, you have begotten me, bred me, loved me. I return those duties back as are right fit. That is, the duty I owe to you for having begotten me, the duty I owe to you for having bred me, the duty I owe to you for having loved me. I return all those back as I ought. I obey you, I love you, and I honor you. In other words, she's the opposite of Hermia. Okay? Why have my sisters husbands if they say they love you all? Now notice her speech isn't all entirely about herself. She's like, okay, Father, look with some clear eyes here. What did Goneril and Reagan say? They love you more than anything else. That means more than Albany and more than Cornwall. I don't know about you, but that's sick. They love you more than their husbands. Haply, when I shall wed, that Lord whose hand must take my plight shall carry half my love with him, half my care and duty. In other words, I will still have love for you. You are my father. But I'm not going to love you with everything. You're not going to get all my love. This is why, my opinion, newly married couples ought to move away. They shouldn't stay in the same town as their parents. Why? Again, and I don't mean my experience. This is what happened to my wife and I, because we lived a long way from both sets of parents. Because all too often, parents do what? Hover, interfere. They want to call the shots. They want to name the children. They want to blah, 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 blah. Why? Yeah. Because they screwed up in their own lives and they want a do-over. Sorry, that was your life. I've got close friends, and the most horrible thing is they're still in the town where their parents are. And I try to tell them as gently as possible, move 1,000 miles away.
Just totally visit her.
Or at least 3 to 4 hours away, where it's not possible to just drop by.
It has to be an overnight.
Okay? Exactly. So she says, my Lord, whom I shall marry, shall have half my love with him, half my care and duty. Sure, I shall never marry like my sisters, to love my father all. She's saying, Burgundy and France, who are there, if I should marry one of you, you get me. I won't, when we're in our bed together, I won't be thinking of dear old dad. Creepy. Okay?
That's disturbing.
But goes thy heart with this? Aye, my lord. What does he mean by that?
Like, do you mean this?
Yes.
Yeah. Are you sure?
This is sincerely what you mean.
Is this your final answer?
Yeah, is this your final answer? Okay.
The week is
Aye, my lord. So young and so what? Untender. What does he mean by untender?
She didn't suck up to him.
So hard, so crass, so cruel, so uncaring. Hey, I'm an old man. You ought to love me and help me and take care of me in my old age. You at least be nice to me. That's what he's saying.
Well, you're really good at that.
Okay?
Your old man voices like this.
It's about the best one I have. It's because my younger voice is all made up.
Okay.
Okay? And she says, so young, my lord, and true. Now, notice, she's speaking the truth. What is she suggesting? Her sisters are speaking. And yet Lear can't see that. Why? Because of his narcissism?
You've been fluffed up by the other ones.
Okay. Why else?
He's doing it in the dark. He writes that.
It goes back to what he said at the opening, his darker purpose. Okay? Now, he has more than one purpose. He has the purpose for which he's talking about right here. We're going to divide the kingdom. What's his darker purpose? What is all of ours darker purpose? To use a good French phrase, to make it look like I'm smart, is raison d'etre. Reason, anybody know what this is?
To be.
Reason for being, or to be. To D or not to D. His reason to be. How many of us know what our reason for existing is? It's one of the great philosophical questions. Why am I here? Hamlet said, oh, alas, the time is out of joint, and that I was born to set it right. Hamlet says his reason for being was to fix the great chain of being. Lear doesn't know what his purpose for life is. He thinks it's to get as many people around him to say how wonderful he is, to suck up to him. Okay? And so the whole play, we're going to see this darker purpose explored, made known. And this is why I think something happened in Shakespeare's life. He starts wrestling with these deep, extremely personal philosophical questions. Why in the world am I? It's the question every suicide asks before pulling the trigger, taking the poison, etc. And the answer a suicide gives is no meaning, no reason. Okay? Just wait till we get to the scene. Gloucester thinks he's standing there on the cliffs of Dover and wants to jump. Thinks he is jumping. And Edgar, dressed up as Tom of Bedlam, tells him, the gods control our destiny, etc. Shakespeare is wrestling with that whole issue in the late 1590s, very early 1600s. Okay? So Lear says, fine, let it be so. That is, you can live with your love and your truth. then truth be thy dower. Because you're getting squat from me, honey. You're not getting a dime. For by the sacred radiance of the sun, and notice what he starts to do. What is he doing in the next several lines?
Cursing her.
Cursing her, swearing an oath. Because keep in mind, this is pre-Christian.
Invoking powers he really doesn't need to be messing with.
Exactly. Okay? This is like Faustus when he calls up Mephistopheles and stuff, not really believing in life after death and the supernatural and Hades and hell and all that kind of stuff. For by the sacred radiance of the sun, the mysteries of Hecate in the night, by all the operation of the orb, from whom we do exist and cease to be. What are the orbs he's talking about?
Stars. Planets.
Sun, moon, stars, planets. Okay. What else? It's the spheres. What has he just said? All the operation of the orbs from whom we do exist. The only reason Lear is suggesting, and this is part of the astrological framework of the late Middle Ages and the Renaissance, the only reason we exist is because at the night of our conception, the stars and planets were aligned in such a way that we were conceived. In other words, if it were another night, that sperm and that egg never would have connected. There would have been ships passing in the night. Okay? That's what he means. And then, how do we cease to be? The stars align. And we, poof, disappear. So what is Lear suggesting is the nature of human existence just right there. It's complete and utter chance. There's no rhyme or reason. It's just sheer blind chance. By all the operation of the orbs from whom we do exist and cease to be, here I disclaim all my paternal care. You are no daughter of mine. Propinquity and property of blood, and as a stranger to my heart and me, hold thee from this forever. I don't have anything to do with you. Get out of my sight. The barbarous Scythian, he that makes his generation messes to gorge his appetite. Whoa. What is he talking about? He that makes his generation messes to gorge his appetite. Look at the gloss for 117. Makes meals of his children or parents, like Atreus in old Greek mythology. Okay? Shall to my bosom be as well neighbored, pitied, and relieved. He will take the cannibal, and not only just the cannibal, the filicide, cannibal, the person who kills his children to eat them, as being nearer and dearer to his heart than his sometime daughter. What does this tell us about Lear's mental state? Whoa, he's not quite all there. Okay? Kent, good, my liege. Peace, Kent. Come not between the dragon and his wrath. Okay, this is where we're going to pick up on, I hate getting old, whatever day it is. Today's what, Tuesday?
Yeah.
Okay, Thursday then. Okay, so we're going to stop there.